to everybody sticking around today. So Karios is technology that we invented with surgeons to protect patients. And so by starting with one problem, cardiac surgeons and issues they had in their surgery, we can actually access other problem areas in all these other areas. So what problem are we addressing? We're addressing post-surgical adhesions. This is scar tissue that develops whenever you have a surgical intervention. Just like when you fall down and scrape your knee or your elbow and you develop a scab, well, the same thing happens internally whenever you have a surgery. 5 out of the 10 most common surgical procedures have adhesions that form after the operation. And the problem is the only way to deal with these adhesions is to perform adhesiolysis or removal, and this leads to increased rates of injury and death. So the whole concept here is by preventing adhesions, not only can we save patient lives, but we can save hospitals money. So this is an undervalued market that creates a huge opportunity. If you look at all the surgeries that are impacted by these adhesions, it's over $10 billion in the US. We're first focused on the cardiac segment that's over $2 billion. Greater than 70% of these patients develop post-surgical adhesions. There'll be over 1 million surgeries by the year 2026, and 20% of those are unpredicted reoperations. I want to say that again. 20% of the patients that receive a second cardiac surgery or a reoperation, it's unpredictable. We're first focused on children with congenital heart defects and adults with ventricular assist devices. This is because these patients have a high frequency and likelihood of these reoperations on a planned schedule. So we have an experienced and successful team in place. Myself, I've translated 4 other products through to the clinic. My co-founder is a world-renowned bioengineer, and we have a surgeon entrepreneur and scientist on the team, as well as the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at UCSD. We also have people that have worked at the FDA, as well as translational hospitals such as St. Jude's and Boston Scientific, for example. So our solution is Tissue Shield. It's a protective barrier, and you can think of it like a temporary protective spray paint. So the surgeon holds it in their hand and sprays it directly on the site that they want it applied to. We have safety and efficacy in mice, rats, and pigs on their hearts, as well as 4 peer-reviewed publications and 3 patents with exclusive commercial licenses. Here we're showing the use of our clinical prototype in an adult pig model on a beating heart. You can see that it easily fits in the surgeon's hand, and you can see the gel forms so fast that there's some of it touching the top of the sternum. You can just wipe that away. So we know that cardiac surgeons want a solution because we've done a double-blinded survey of 117 of them with an average amount of experience of 12 years. And here are some scary facts that we learned about this. 50% of these surgeons have aborted a surgery mid-surgery because of the severity of these adhesions. 62% of these surgeons have not performed a life-saving cardiac surgery on a patient because their concerns were that the adhesions would be so severe that they would have to abort. 80% said that these adhesions negatively affect patient outcomes, and 99% believe that adhesions increase risk to patients. But really excitingly, 84% said they would use a product like Tissue Shield if it was available. And I like showing this quote from Dr. Billy Cohn, or Dr. Houston, as everybody at Houston calls him. He said, if this product was available, he'd be using it on his patients. So the reason we're in the cardiac space is there's nothing to help these patients. So the standard of care is doing nothing. So other products that have been FDA approved for abdominal and pelvic uses tried to translate to the cardiac indication, but have failed. And these include films, like we saw in an earlier talk, as well as some sprayable barriers. But the point here is, while these products exist in other indications, their application to the heart to prevent post-surgical cardiac adhesions was unsuccessful. So why are we succeeding where they failed? Well, we specifically went all the way back to the basics. We interviewed surgeons and asked them the properties that they wanted. Well, they told us they want a sprayable, not a film. They said they want it ready to use, and they said it wanted anti-clogging. We also looked at the chemistry being used here with these materials that allows them to form that barrier. So we invented new chemistry with new polymers to address these issues of binding, low swelling. And to that end, we're fully synthetic, so we can scale up to tens or hundreds of kilograms, and we have a long lifespan in vivo, meaning that when we're applied to the tissue, we last 6 to 8 weeks, while all these other degradable products only last 2 to 7 days. And here we're showing our clinical prototype easily fits into the surgeon's hand and is easily extrudable. So the point here is that other studies done in the abdominal space showing reduction of abdominal adhesions can save those hospitals greater than 40%. By applying that model with some adjustments based on what happens with cardiac surgery, we project that use of Tissue Shield can save US hospitals over $2.2 billion just in the cardiac space. Well, what are these benefits? Where are they getting these savings from? First, less patient injury and less patient death. Second, we can reduce time and material costs for current and future operations. So typically when you have a reoperation case, that is your only case for the day. But when you have first operation patients, sometimes these surgeons can put 2 in a day. We also can decrease length of stay and the amount of complications. This leads to improved patient outcomes and satisfaction. We have a clear regulatory path. We've met with the FDA a handful of times. So our goal is to be submitting our EFS IDE at the end of this year and be applying for breakthrough device next year and submission of our PMA. We've got great support from medical device executives, people with great experience in the regulatory and reimbursement space, as well as these groups that work great with these class 3 PMA cardiac devices. So our proposed clinical trial is in alignment with the FDA. They agreed and they like it. So the concept is to focus on patients with a high likelihood of reoperation. This leads to a quicker turnaround for the study. We're first focused on these congenital heart defect patients who have a Norwood procedure or a BT shunt at 2 to 4 weeks of life. They then receive a Glenn procedure, usually 3 to 4 months later. This provides a tight window for us to go back in and assess those adhesions and show that our product had an impact for those patients. We're doing 20 patients, 10 treatment, 10 no treatment, and the clinical endpoints are adhesion and safety, with secondary endpoints being some of those value proposition items that I mentioned on a previous slide. And we're gonna be doing this at 6 to 8 clinical sites. So we have a clear commercialization pathway. We were founded in 2020. We already have preclinical data and scale up in place, targeting our first in human study. We've met with the FDA, having Q-subs, and we'll be applying for breakthrough device. We have 3 patents with exclusive commercial licenses, as well as putting in our own patents right now. Currently, we're here trying to close out our seed round, which is oversubscribed. So we have a private funding of over 1.4 million, grants over 1.2 million. These grants include from the Pediatric Device Consortiums, if you were here early, as well as from the NIH and NHLBI. Pending, we have $1.6 million in grants. We're just waiting for the final notice of award. So we're in a strong position here, but as we all know, with this economic environment, we kind of just want to close out the seed round up to that 2 million. So the point here is that after each clinical study, we have a point or an inflection point for licensing opportunities. So you can see after our IDE, our EFS IDE, we can then follow that up either with a licensing deal or then move to a larger pivotal study. So what do the deals look like that occur in the space? Well, they range from 150 to over almost $500 million. And these are some of the players that have products or verticals in this space and that have done these deals. I like to call it Seprafilm, which you saw on a previous slide, which was acquired by Baxter from Sanofi for $350 million, and Omrix Biopharmaceuticals acquired by J&J for $438. So seed round, $2 million round, lead investor in place on a convertible note, already 1.4 committed in the bank account, not at SVB though. Convertible note terms, 5% interest, 20% discount on a 2-year term with an $8 million cap. And the key value creation milestones are those regulatory submissions. We've already actually scaled up manufacturing, so it's just polishing out those clinical trial sites to get that EFS IDE approved. And so what I want to end with here is, the point is surgeons want a solution to this. We've interviewed, so I showed you the survey data, but I've personally talked to over 150 surgeons, and over 75 of them are US pediatric and adult cardiac surgeons. So they want an answer to this problem. There's no competition in the cardiac space. The number of surgeries is growing globally, especially as the patient population ages, and surgeries are becoming safer, so people are getting more and more reoperations. So this creates this issue where they have to deal with the scar tissue. We've de-risked this with safety and efficacy in 3 animal models, and we have 3 patents with exclusive commercial licenses. So this, my lawyer makes me put up here. So thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.